the challenge on these things is like, how do I give you a snappy title that you look at the program, you think, you know what, I want to sit in on that session. Sounds like they're going to be talking about something interesting. So I thought, okay, we're in this beautiful building, maritime connection, let's go on. Let's use the word Titanic, at least we've all got a picture in our mind there. I actually think that there's a number of sort of maybe parallels, though, to what we face with our industry. I mean, the quote of, was the Titanic unsinkable was actually never used up until it sank. It was almost, the assumption was there was this creation that was at the pinnacle of engineering that worked perfectly. It was unthinkable to even question the concept. Does that perhaps sound like it might have a relation to where we're at in the industry, having seen the numbers that Nick Lane presented earlier? We do seem to be at a bit of a transformative point in our industry when we start to look at the growth of some of the other services coming. So really what I wanted to do was discuss with Uka, who really is at the sharp point of talking with customers every day. So Uka, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Uku Tomikas. I've been in this industry a few years. That's what I looked like before I got into telco. And yes, my job from day to day is talking to enterprises, talking to businesses. And for the better part of 2 years, whoever's been active in MEF has heard me talking about AIT, fraud, and everything else related to that as well. So unfortunately, it's become a hallmark of my day-to-day work to discuss this particular topic and to have an opinion on it.
Thanks. And yeah, I am here on behalf of ENEA. If you're not familiar with ENEA, we've actually got a 55-year history. ENEA have come from a background of creating real-time operating systems. They acquired Adaptive Mobile 2 years ago. Adaptive Mobile, for 20 years, have been at the forefront of fighting spam, abuse, fraud in the messaging ecosystem and in the security ecosystem. So what I'm going to be doing today is presenting some of the insights we have based upon that customer base. But the reason I'm talking about dates is, again, I can't help but feel, we're in this 200-year-old building. In 200 years' time, is there going to be a conference on, whatever the latest, greatest flying car thing might be, sitting in a telco building? Certainly, unfortunately, I've been around long enough that I know some of the buildings I've worked with have already been torn down and now rebuilt. And I think that's one of the key themes that we want to be coming across here is like, are the things that we're doing now for near-term objectives? Frankly, probably we're all being driven by this quarter's objectives, or are we building something for the next 5 years, 10 years? Like, we've got to be thinking decades here. Because as we keep hearing, our customers, the planning cycle, sticking with the maritime analogy, it's like a container ship. Once they make decisions, once they start processes, they are thinking long-term there. And I think,
absolutely.
Yeah, what we're going to be talking here, particularly with things like AIT, is how something can very quickly affect that and then create a very long-term change in the industry. So, what is AIT? I think, again, thinking about time, 12 months ago, Uka, how many sessions would you say would have mentioned AIT?
Last year, probably, 2 or 3? This year, 50% of total panels are related to at least this topic. So there's definitely a marked uptick in how much we're talking about it, but also how much businesses ask about it, talk about it, and see it affect especially their bottom lines. So it's definitely a much more prevalent question discussed within the industry, but also very, very much by enterprises, even mid-market and smaller businesses alike.
Yeah, I think exactly that. A year ago, 2 years ago, it was an industry term.
Yeah.
It was just people in a room like this that were talking about it. I think things like Elon Musk's quote and tweet have started to move it into the public attention. And yeah, I think it's now become a discussion point for customers. Are you finding customers aware of it?
Absolutely. The question is whether they know that it's AIT or whether it's, bots boosting fake traffic, whatever it is in particular that it's called. everyone's understanding of it, how it functions, differ from one sort of version to another. The bottom line thing everybody understands is that they don't mean to send as many messages as they're getting billed for. That's it. The numbers are going higher, the revenue doesn't match, say, the user growth or the transaction growth, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a mismatch between the use of the channel and the money it should be generating and the cost that is associated with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point, because the way the businesses think about it, that's really who is being most affected.
Yeah.
It's about business outcomes. When we read the definitions, it's more about the industry impact. It's an inward-looking thing, and I think it doesn't necessarily need to sit inside a nice, neat box. It's not just solely AIT. It's a combination of this, traffic trashing, fraud, abuse, poisoning, conversion rate. It's things that together are causing impacts that, frankly, are damaging businesses' long-term ability to forecast, to budget, to plan their own business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you start in January and you're expecting, let's say, 10 to 15% growth in your business or a 5% growth in your business, you also expect a similar amount of growth to then transition over into your channel sort of usage or channel costs as well. But when you start in, say, January, and we've had businesses that we've discussed AIT with, let's say start of last year, for example, and then said that as long as it doesn't go over 15,000 euros a year additionally, they don't care. And all of a sudden, in combination with price changes in AIT, it's gone from 15,000 in addition to 150,000 euros in addition. I don't care what business you are, if your bottom line has changed by 150 grand, you're going to pay attention. Yeah. And everybody pays attention. The vastness of the issue stems from the fact that the damages that businesses took either in, the most, if we look back into like 2021, 2022 early, even 2023 early, the most prevalent use of AIT is you would see spikes. Someone would get hit with 100,000 messages in 2 days into destinations where they would only be sending like 20 messages, for example, to now transitioning to this sort of bleeding model where they just get boosted day after day after day by like 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%. So it's a lot more masked within the actual sort of traffic itself, but as a whole leads to a larger impact. The fact of the matter is, people still see the damage it is doing to them. It was previously so much more evident that if you're a business whose budget for business messaging per month was 500 euros and all of a sudden you get a 10,000 euro invoice, it's business crippling to certain businesses. Now it's gone from like 500 to, let's say, 800 with all the price increases and everything else. It's not sort of immediately crippling, but it starts getting to a position where everybody asks more questions of why. Like, why does an operator raise prices from 0.005 to 10 cents? What's the microeconomic, macroeconomic reasoning for that? And there I am going,
Yeah. But here's the bill.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm going to ask you to pay for it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is what we as an industry really, again, Nick showed us the rate of change, being able to articulate, to give our customers predictability in the business is utterly key in this. And to do that, again, we need to understand things. We need to understand, why things are changing. With AIT, who's doing it? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? Not just a technical definition of what is it. And I think, the key thing is it comes down to numbers. Again, you said it used to be just like maybe a day burst here, a day burst there. But as we can see, people get addicted to this hit of additional revenue. It's gone from being something of, it's helped me meet my quarter-end numbers, to, well, actually, I don't think things are looking good next month. I better just start padding it up, to becoming, have I actually built my business on the basis of this type of abuse? And I think, unfortunately, it's, again, compounding factors. It's not just AIT, but it's a combination of this, exclusivity, high termination rates. We're feeding off these drugs that are questioning whether it's a sustainable growth model to keep doing this. As we say, one of the call to actions, one of the first recommendations on the MEF paper on this is to start talking about pricing. Again, it's that P word, but let's start looking at termination rates. Let's start helping our customers plan their business.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of the unfortunate issue where, and Ira talked about this, a few panels back, this question of we're not incentivized to improve the business 5 years from now. No one's goals are to have more profit 5 years from now, right? It's next month, next quarter, next year. That's our incentive marker. And in a lot of situations, you also have this dichotomy between am I even going to be in this business 3 years from now? There are plenty of people within this industry who don't own the business that they're working in. Most don't own a piece of the business they're working in. 3 years down the line, they're looking at new career perspectives, so they're looking to maximize their own gains, and they're incentivized to maximize those gains for themselves. So why would we expect anything to change for the better when we're incentivizing the polar opposite, right? No one's going to get a target for next quarter that's lower than this quarter. Yeah. So how would you then fight AIT, decrease pricing, and raise revenue at the same time? Answer me that.
And again, this is why we feel there's an urgency around these discussions, because we're becoming increasingly in the now, the short term, the quarter, this week's achievements, this quarter's targets, this year's KPIs. Again, let's look around us. These folks were building long term. The nature and the cycle of the trading industry 200 years ago was a very long cycle. It necessitated that type of long-term view. It feels that right now we are being driven by the wrong metrics. I think to your point there, if we really looked inside ourselves, can we see ourselves sitting here in 3 years, in 5 years? The absolute reality is we will be. I know I've been coming to these events for years. This is my 22nd year of doing MWCs. It's like, whether we like it or not, you will be around in this industry because we're pretty good at what we do. We will be here. We have connections. We have relationships. That will keep us in this industry. We have to really start acting like we are going to be here for that long term, because these have implications to how people trust us. And, real numbers again. This is what is happening. This is an example of just one customer in one market who is affected by AIT. The green traffic is their legitimate messages. The blue columns is AIT. We're a firewall company. We see every message. We are able to detect every message. There is no hiding in this. It's not particularly complicated to find this stuff. And again, great to see in that MEF white paper, the recommendations coming out of let's start sharing stats. We have this visibility. We know the volumes, we know the brands, we know the connections, we know the terminating networks. The one thing I would say about this data, this particular market has not had a price change. This particular market does not have exclusivity for connection. This particular market is not high international termination rates. So whilst there is absolutely correlation between those three factors in AIT, it is not an exclusivity. It is happening, as Nick saw with his risk index, it is absolutely happening across the globe. Uka, are you finding customers who are faced with this type of unexpected spend?
Sure, of course. That's the nature of why we have 50% of the panels talking about AIT. If they didn't, we wouldn't be talking about this. So yes, of course they are. Everybody is. And it's across the board as well, from smaller businesses to bigger businesses. It just depends on what the volumes are and where it sort of goes from there. And it's also this idea that, there's a correlation between certain factors, but AIT has sort of transitioned from being a more pinpointable issue in terms of in which markets it is, in which types of conditions it sort of happens in, to becoming the new part of just getting the new margin. It's the new blending, right? So we went from, using your whatever SS7s and SIMs and whatever else you want to use for your purposes of getting the number that the enterprise requires, to now mix in some trashing and mix in some AIT and just anything to get that margin across the line. because ultimately, and let's not also play down the fact that enterprises have a part to play in this as well. Their consistent drive to get the bottom price possible while knowing that the market rate is here, they had to know that somewhere the penny was going to drop. And it's just a question of, previously it was the operators who were getting screwed because everyone was sort of bypassing them. They get better at firewalls, somebody else gets screwed. It's always going to be something. It at least feels like that. Last year everyone was trying to sell you sort of AIT traffic or try to generate on your behalf. Now everyone's looking for a local bypass route. It's always something that we're looking for to find and meet the incentives that we currently have, not the incentives we potentially could have 5 years down the line.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of those procurement departments, their incentive is purely monetary at the moment. That's because that's what they see. And again, with the opportunity of publishing stats, maybe there's opportunity to look at quality indexes or something that we can articulate as a value. I mean, we can articulate the value of rich messaging because it's tangibly a different experience. But let's start measuring, for example, things like quality indexes and the assurance and the overall better experience by the brand, by the customer. I mean, at the end of the day, those are the two most important folks. And then the experience for everybody else in between. So I put up a slide at the start that had a lot of words on. And I bet there's not a single person in this room, myself included, that could remember every single one of those words. But those were the definition of what is AIT. I mean, we spent 20 minutes talking about it. We've had quite a few panels over yesterday and today talking about it. We still feel that it's one of those things, it's 3 letters. It's very easy to say, but actually, if you asked everyone, you'd get a different definition. It is a complex topic. In fact, there is no such thing as AIT. I mean, the definitions we saw from the MEF paper, they talk about 2 different types. But you go to the GSMA, they actually talk about 3 different types. You go to the i3 forum, they talk about yet something else. There are different definitions, all using the same term. That is a source of chaos. It's a source of confusion. I mean, one of the things that we at ANIA are trying to promote, completely independent of any particular vendor or position in the ecosystem, is a way of trying to define these. And again, I would welcome anyone to take these definitions, disagree with them, change them, improve them, enhance them, but please let's start getting specific on what the different types of AIT are, because it's critical. I mean, for example, and I'm going to have to use real examples here. On the MEF paper, not a single mention of traffic trashing. I think we all know what traffic trashing is. It is absolutely one of the enabling components to AIT. So why are we not talking about it? Why are we not measuring it? By not talking about it, the measurement that is spoken about in the paper occurs at this point. What you can see is traffic is dropped before it even gets there. So if we're not considering these factors, we're not measuring the right thing, we're not got the right data points, we're not able to tell the brands the impact, and we're already building all of our assumptions on wrong data. We have to get specific. Another simple thing, artificial generation of traffic. In some cases, people see this as synonymous or the same as AIT. Other people think it's an entirely legitimate way of testing customer experience, billing accuracy, service quality, speed of response. So is it legitimate or is it bad? Come on, let's as an industry finally decide and agree on consistent right uses of terms. So again, we would welcome folks picking this up, starting to use this in more papers and ensuring that we have clarity in what we're talking about here. So when we are sharing statistics, we know exactly that we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I fully agree as well. And the virtual number outpayment question there as well, the idea of who and why and how exactly benefit from the business as well, it's gotten better. A lot of this, since we're having these conversations here, obviously, we're having another panel on this particular topic. It's getting a lot better. There are definitions, there are papers, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it was about 2 years ago when we were talking about AIT with one of the operators in our local market. And when we describe what was going on and what we're seeing, they go, oh yeah, we had a case, a month back when a company wanted to buy 100,000 numbers a month. Now, for reference, Estonia is a market where 1.3 million people live, so 100,000 numbers per month for the next year would be a number for every person in the country. The issue with it was, of course, somebody's going to ask this. They get asked for ludicrous stuff all the time. The main problem for me was that the head of that department that I was talking to said that, yeah, I took it to my legal team and they said that this is fishy. The head of that messaging department didn't think it was fishy. It was the legal team that shot him down. Didn't see that there was something wrong with one business coming in and buying enough numbers to service an entire country, every single man, woman, and child in that particular market, and didn't see a particular issue with it at that point in time until the legal team pointed it out. Of course they didn't, because they charge between, say, 2 and 5 euros per number. So on somebody's bottom line, that would have been 200 to 500K per month for a year. You're talking millions. So of course, there is an incentive to go down that route. It's that, that heroin example that got brought into play. It's a powerful drug.
Yeah, they met their objectives, but enabled a fraud.
Of course.
Yeah. And again, this is why absolute clarity, because we can see there is a responsibility, for example, in that instance for MNOs to start saying, if we're going to issue number blocks, do we really understand why? Do we truly understand what the scope for misuse is? How are we going to ensure it? Who's going to monitor if that's being abused and misused? This is why I think, again, opportunities in best practice document to start sort of blending all of these things together and say, actually, yeah, we've written this AIT paper, now let's update the best practice document to include things like virtual number out payments. We're now seeing this scope of abuse and fraud. Likewise, brands. We often say to brands, improve your capture on your web forms so people can't misuse and abuse your services. Did you actually know that now capture is more easily solved by AI than by humans? So, spotting those street lamps or spotting the bicycles or the pedestrian crossings, AI can solve that better than human can. So actually, if somebody's determined to make money, putting a simple capture form might not be the barrier that we think it is. So again, thinking through the implications of our recommendations, absolutely critical in this. Again, sharing numbers. This is an example of a bot-type attack. So, this example that we often think about when we talk about AIT, which is sort of bots generating things in web forms. 3 different brands, all in the same industry, all in the same marketplace, but with very different fraud profiles. And this is taken at the same point in time. So the first brand, you can see only a single country being targeted on average about once every 3 days. In the second brand example, 2 countries being targeted almost continually. In the third example, a broad blend. And again, it's a case of one technique for detection does not work as a single solution. This is, I say, one source, one period of time, and we've already seen a broad range of techniques being used to try and avoid detection. Another example, this is now taken at a stage further down in the chain. Again, one of those examples of definitions that needs to be captured, because we've got 3 major brands being used on one account, and then in fact, the actual primary brand associated with that account. And again, this comes down to not only the who is doing it, but the why are they doing it. Again, often with AIT, we talk about it in terms of financial fraud gain, but it's only in context of the virtual number out payment or the traffic trashing do we actually understand how the money is taken out, or in the case of some of these scenarios, it's conversion rate poisoning. It's a non-financial based driver on that. But again, understanding the behavior enables us to measure the impact to brands. So yeah, we're talking about time on this. We're saying this isn't something that's just about solving the problem. And in fact, all the projections, and again, thanks so much to Nick for helping out on building the long-term projections. This is the view of an AIT forecast. You can see the problem goes away. It's good, right? Unfortunately, when we dig into what's happening here, it's going away because we're starting to lose our customers' confidence. It's going away because they're moving to alternative channels. They want predictability in their business. They're looking towards channels. I mean, Uka, you must be finding this when customers are coming to you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And even from our business perspective as well, if you think about predictability or even ease of doing business in a way. So a lot of businesses that we're currently working with, of course, they want to try alternative channels. So if I can be, let's say, just not even a partner, but a tech enabler for WhatsApp, all I do is pretty much provide an API connection. They handle billing with Meta, templates with Meta, everything else with Meta, right? I just charge a service fee in between. I don't have to hassle with billing. I don't have to hassle with absolutely anything besides just keeping a connection open. They don't have to do an integration. Lovely. I don't have to deal with none of the sort of unpredictability. I don't have to have conversations about why they rose prices or who operator rose prices or why one provider is giving me one price and another one's giving me another price. I have to worry about nearly none of the complexities of SMS when I'm just being, let's say, a tech provider for WhatsApp. Sure, I'm probably going to make objectively less money because I don't have SMS margins, et cetera, but at the same time, I'm also creating a lot less friction for myself within that business. So you get to a position where as an aggregator, you also have to think, what am I advocating to my businesses down that line? Because today, if I'm working with, large taxi or food delivery companies, for example, functioning in Africa, and then I look at what Nick shared as well. And also, I think we should have a Nick Lane swear jar on the stage, just so everyone can put a coin in every time we mention him. But why would I not recommend them use WhatsApp wholesale in Africa? It's the one place where both international and local rates are lower on WhatsApp. It has good penetration. It's easy to use. Those areas are wrought with AIT. It has, well, depending on, of course, African markets, not all are wrought with AIT, but there's a lot of AIT there. There are a lot of price raises. Why am I then advocating as a business for SMS if I could advocate for something else? So I'm helping along to that, pushing the industry towards a different direction. Because it's better for my business in the long run, easier, creates a better customer experience, creates a better customer relationship as well, because every single time we have to go to our customers with another price increase or another regulation change or another AIT attack or something like that, we're eroding not just the trust in the channel, but the trust in the relationship that I have with that business, because I'm the one constantly delivering the bad news. I can blame it on whoever I want, but at one point in time, if it's 20 times in a row, and it's not going away. Yeah. We talk about the increase in international pricing hampering business. We're talking about AIT hampering business, right? Every one of us knows at least some price ranges that either happened last week or are coming up next month. It's not going anywhere. It's still going to happen. So the question is, how do we then get to a position where it gets better? What needs to happen? The reasoning why these new reports have come out, and because we've started talking about more, is because a lot more businesses have started feeling the squeeze. Yeah. Brands have left, traffic has migrated, revenues are down. That's when we start doing something. The thing that you mentioned before as well, and why the Titanic example is a very apt one here, is once a large enterprise makes a decision to switch off, they're not going to switch on in a month. Yeah. They may not switch on ever again. So if we've already lost major enterprises, and if we're now teetering on the verge of losing more, then it will sink at one point in time, unfortunately, if we continue down the same path with the same incentives.
Yeah, it's irreversible, exactly that. So really, the clarion call to action, more information, please download our white paper that describes those attacks in more detail. Please look at the MEF Code of Conduct. Please look at the MEF AIT paper. Please go to Mobile Squared and see the data. As an industry, we're starting to talk about this more publicly. Yep. I really do think that in terms of the recommendations, it's all about now starting to get data, to get stats, so we can share it with customers, so we can have their conversations with them to give them the confidence back in this channel. So when we are here next year, we are actually talking from a positive perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you. Any questions?
Sure. Zinderpal Mamik from .go. Excellent presentation. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for that. I have maybe a couple of questions. I'll start with one. You mentioned this AIT in the context of SMS. Do you also see it occurring on WhatsApp and RCS, especially with WhatsApp being so pervasive now? And if not, why not? Why will it not occur there?
Well, certainly from a firewall vendor, I can answer the perspective we do not see AIT on WhatsApp. For one reason, we can't see WhatsApp. I mean, it's a big selling point that it's encrypted end-to-end, but the downside is we have no visibility, no understanding, no insight, no control. So yes, it could quite well be happening. I mean, just in context, we don't just do AIT, we do a lot of anti-spam. We absolutely know that channel has been used for spam, for fraud, for phishing. Why wouldn't it be? The nature of it. So if there is a way of extracting commercial gain out of it, I mean, we've seen with things like number out payment that people can take money out of with traffic terminating. If there's a way of getting financial gain or affecting a competitor's service, then yes, I think it will become an inevitable channel for some form of abuse. Whether we call it AIT or whether it's called something else, I couldn't say. But right now, the answer is we are blind to it, but I fear that it will suffer same or similar issues.
Yeah, from our side as well. We haven't seen AIT, or at least seen it to the extent of that, but we've seen everything else. So last year at, I think it was WWC, when we're talking about the same topics with partners, et cetera, then you could see a migration from people selling AIT solutions, or generated traffic essentially, to overwritten WhatsApp solutions. So they would register their own sender, try to do something generic, and to just create a WhatsApp blend. So it was just a transition from one model of functioning to another model of functioning. And if there is a commercial model that is viable for somebody, I think it will be a thing there as well. Right now, it's just hard to see how somebody generating or making AIT on WhatsApp would make a lot of additional revenue for themselves, unless they were a tech partner, or not even a tech partner, but a full business partner, or were somewhere in the chain where they could control it the same way they did AIT. And I think that there's not enough players controlling that chain, hence not enough incentive to do AIT.
Yeah. Thanks. So, any more questions? There we go.
Sure. Hi, Mariana Osorio from Central Global. Well, thank you for this presentation, really. I enjoy it. I have a question. You know that we have been receiving emails a lot with this opportunity. Yes. And, well, of course, I guess some telcos will actually see it as opportunity and give them the interconnection. That's the truth. It's maybe a way to make profit faster and easier. So what do you think, because these guys are very exposed. They even put the brands on the email and everything. Mm-hmm. So do you think, is there any consequences of this with these guys and these companies, or they're just getting away with it? I mean,
most are just getting away with it.
Yeah.
Most are getting away with it. And the other sort of thing is that there are probably no people within this room who don't know at least one or another, probably even semi-well-known business that does, or at least at one point in time has done AIT, but no one's going to publicly call them out, because then we'd all be susceptible to libel and we'll probably be sued, and there's a whole sort of process that goes behind it, because the problem with AIT is it's also pretty hard to prove. The reasoning why it's hard to fight is also the reasoning that makes it quite hard to prove. So if I now paint a picture of a specific brand, let's say a brand that is a taxi and food delivery app that's prevalent in the African markets, and I say that they have a specific provider that provides for them, that uses their name as a tagline on their website, it is so hard to not point the finger. Yet if I point a finger on this stage, I'll end up getting a cease or desist, or I'll end up getting sued, because if I don't have hard evidence, and those businesses aren't stupid enough to leave hard evidence, What could I do? And you could always just blame an account manager for that business decision. It was that one rogue person's decision to do that because, it was their erroneous ways. They created the interconnection, et cetera, et cetera. On an institutional level, it's incredibly hard to prove that somebody did it. On an institutional level, it's incredibly hard to keep somebody accountable for those actions as well.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, it's like they say it, like it is generated traffic. So that's why I say, well, nobody's doing anything with it.
I
Thank
think
you.
As a clarion call, I don't know if Dario's in the room, but it is one of the recommendations by MEF in the paper that was just released last week that we actually do start to publish stats. And I think, in this industry, everything has an auditability in terms of we can see where it came from. We can see the size, we can see the brand, and we can see where it came from. So if in 12 months' time we're able to now start sharing these stats and in public environments, maybe it starts to shine more light on that and make more accountability. Fantastic. So I was going to say, I'm very aware of the time. Have we got time for one more, or? Yeah, no, I was going to say, I know, appreciate it's lunchtime now, so if anybody has any questions, just come grab me. I'll be either on our stand or at lunch. But no, appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again.